Well, Laura Mintie Willson, thanks for giving your time to talk about your life experiences, especially those relating to McMinn County. You've been recognized for your contributions by being named Mother of the Year and being given an honorary doctorate by Tennessee Wesleyan University. So your remembrances and observations will certainly be appreciated. With full disclosure, I am your oldest child, Paul Wilson. So Mintie, let's start with your memories of your family and childhood in McMinn County, please.
I was born in Etowah, Tennessee, at my grandmother's house, and my mother had her family came to Etowah in the early 1900s from North Carolina. My grandfather, Raby, was an attorney, and at that point, Etowah was a boom town, and he came there for the fatherly, thought it was a good place to practice law. And my mother had a sister and a brother, and she had been a secretary with the LNN, and my father was born in McMinn County and grew up there with his. There were 8 children in his family, 5 boys and 3 girls, who grew up on Mecca Pike out on a farm, and they all ended up in later years. The brothers always lived in Etowah, and then the sisters had married and moved off, but then they came back. So we had a big family of lots of cousins, and we were very close growing up. I had one sister, Carol, who is 3 years younger than I am, and we lived in my grandmother's house until my father bought a house on Ohio Avenue and remodeled it, and we moved there, and my grandmother, Raby, and my Aunt Sarah, my mother's sister, lived with us all my growing up years. I attended the Etowah Grammar School and Etowah Junior High and then Etowah High School, and started school with the same group of people that I graduated high school with. And it was small school, small classes. We were very close. We just had it was a great place to grow up. The railroad was very important to Etowah, and most of my friends' fathers worked for the railroad, and it was a big part of our growing up. Everything centered around the depot, and during the war, I was in high school during the war, and we were many things that we weren't able to do that we would have been. If we were going to a ball game somewhere, you rode a bus, or maybe your parents took you because, no one had a car, and we were curtailed on certain things, but it was still a great experience. We enjoyed the football and the basketball and all the sports growing up. When I graduated from high school in 1945 and went to school at Ward Belmont, in Nashville, which was a 4-year high school and 2-year college for women. And I had never seen the campus when my mother and father took me over there and let me out. And I spent 2 years and loved every minute of it, had made some good friends that I kept through the years. And then Nashville was an interesting, great place to go to school. It was just a big city to me and fun to be in. Then when I graduated from Ward Belmont, I decided to go to University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And one time, not long ago, my grandson Hugh asked me how did I choose to go to the schools that I went to. And I said, well, I didn't. I went where my parents wanted me to go, because my grandmother, Cantrell, had gone to Ward Seminary, which was a forerunner of Ward Belmont, and my grandfather Raby had attended the University of North Carolina, where he got a law degree. So again, they took me to Chapel Hill, which I had never seen, and I loved every minute of that. Had a great experience there, and when I graduated in 1949, there were several girls friends of mine who we went to to Winston-Salem and got jobs, and I got a job with Blue Cross Blue Shield, which was an office in the R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company, and it was completely all women. It was interesting because the woman who had started Blue Cross Blue Shield was head of it, and I worked there and enjoyed it. And we lived in an old house. We had rooms on the second floor of this old house, and then we ate our meals across the street at a boarding house, and we had a great experience. And I had started in 1946. I had a blind date with Hugh Wilson, and we started dating from then. And for the next 4 years, we dated when I was home and he was home. He had been in the service. He was in the submarines, the Navy, and when he came home, I met him in 1946. He was attending UT and working on his family farm at Nyota. He was an only child and had interesting career in the Navy, and then we married in 1950 at the Wesleyan Memorial Methodist Church in Etowah, which was my home church, who I grew up attending, and we after we married, we decided to go. He had not graduated from UT, so we decided we would go to California. Hugh was born in California when his father had gone to California as a young man during the Depression and worked out there, and Hugh's mother married there, and Hugh was born in Merced, California. He could go to the university out there free of charge because of being born in California. So we drove to California and went to Berkeley, and he attended the University of California there and worked part-time in the shipyards and in filling stations. And we stayed there a year and then moved to Davis to the agricultural school and lived there for a year. Hugh had relatives on both sides of his family that lived in that area, which was great because we got to know them and enjoyed it. It was such a different change and a different lifestyle that we had a great time. But in 1952, we came home to Tennessee. His father and mother moved out of the farmhouse and turned the farm and the house over to us. And they moved to live in town of Nyota. So we had a dairy farm, and Hugh worked on the dairy farm, and he had some other part-time jobs. He worked for the health department and other things, but farming was hard, and we had several years of really dry weather, and we finally decided we needed something different. And in 1957, he went to work at Citizens National Bank in Athens as cashier, and found that was his calling, and he enjoyed that. And we ended up selling the dairy cows, and from then on we've had beef cattle. So we settled down in Nyota, and Paul was born in California in 1951, and so we had him when we moved home. You want me to stop for a minute?
I think you've done wonderful. Thank you so much. I think you've done wonderful. And I think one of the points is, of course, your sister, Aunt Carol, went both to Ward Belmont and to Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Of course, Ward Belmont is now Belmont University, one of the most outstanding schools in the South. Still got a lot of heritage there, but obviously your family had a high appreciation for education. They picked where you would go to school. They did that, and you've always said that was the best decision ever, perhaps ever made for you. What about the Carlocks from the Carlock community? They were very involved in education,
yes,
weren't they?
They were. My grandmother Carlock had attended Warren Seminary, but I think she was the only person in either one the Cantrells or the Carlocks or any of my family who, other than my grandfather Raby, who had been to college. And but my mother and father thought it's very important for us to get an education. They had not done that, and they thought it was very important. And my grandfather Carlock was in the state legislature, and I never knew any of my grandparents. I never knew any of but my grandmother Raby was the only grandparent, and I've always felt like I missed a lot, but not knowing the others.
Well, thank you for that. I know part of the family history is that your grandfather lived in a log cabin overlooking the Conasauga Valley, and you want to talk just a little bit about what you've heard about that?
Well, my grandfather, they had 8 children, these 8 children, and my grandmother, Cantrell, then died when the youngest child was a very little baby. She died. And so my grandfather raised those 8 children, and he never married again. And he lived in this log cabin type house out on the farm, where he had always been. And they were very close family, very close to him. And he started the Water and Light Company in Etowah, and the boys always worked there, and they strung the wires, electrical, and laid pipe and everything. That all through the years they worked there, and then during the Depression, the First National Bank in Etowah failed, and after that, at the Water and Light Company, they were cashing a lot of checks and for people, and so he decided that we needed a bank in Etowah. And the story was that he borrowed $50,000 and organized the bank, and it was Cantrell Banking Company. And the 5 brothers and the 3 sisters were always directors. Those women were directors all their lives too. And then later, after all of our parents were deceased, and the cousins owned the bank, and we sold it later.
So you've actually served on the board of directors of 2 banks. You served for about a decade on the board of Citizens National Bank after your husband, Hugh Wilson, died, and appreciate that. I think that's a remarkable achievement. And I think your grandfather was a notable entrepreneur. Supposedly the cabin he lived in was called the Bohunk, and he owned the Water and Light, or the family did, and he didn't have electricity or running water in his own cabin. And so I think that says a lot about him. He was careful with his money, wasn't he? So
I think he was.
To do that, but thanks for that's perfect. I know. You talk a little bit about the experience at the Englewood Bridge and Billy Stewart and what happened that February. Please.
Well, we were going to Etowah, and the creek had flooded between Etowah and Athens. So we ended up going to Englewood to go down Highway 411, and as we were south of Englewood, there were 2 cars in front of us, and Hugh started to pass one of them, and that car pulled out too, and it hit us, and we ended up going off the side of the road and down a long ways, and ended up in the creek. And I thought we were on solid. It was all right, and Hugh kept telling me, get out, and I finally got the window down and got out that way, and it was a convertible, so he got the back window out, and our baby was in that back seat, and he got the baby out, and we ended up in a tree in the creek, hanging on. And one man came out and tried to help us, and he ended up in the tree with us. And then Bill Stewart and Mr. Tennyson came by they both worked for the telephone company. and they had equipment, and they got a line out there, and they got us out of the creek, and they were honored by the telephone company, and then just recently, 2 years ago, the bridge there where we had the accident was named for Bill Stewart.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's important to note that it was February, very cold weather. The creek was in flood stage. You had hypothermia.
We were fortunate. We were so fortunate.
And yes, and you're very
make
fortunate and had the wonderful volunteer spirit that came, and very fortunate to be saved. You're noted for your civic involvement, and we live not very far from Nowda, Tennessee, where Harry T. Burns Sr. Grew up, and we had the recent mural unveiling there for the suffrage movement, and you and I talked about this. To your recollection, you voted in every election since you were eligible to vote. Is that correct?
I've never missed one.
Well, thank you. Don't miss one going forward, please. Civic involvement is so important, and your family was noted for that. Talk a little bit about, and we talked about this recently. Talk about the experiment in international living that you were involved in for almost a decade, please.
Well, I've tried to remember, but it's been quite a while, and I don't remember exactly how we got formed, but Gertie Harrell and Mildred Sullins and I were the committee, and I'm not sure how this happened, but it was through this organization, the Experiment in International Living, and we brought students, most of them were high school age, to Athens, to McMinn County, to spend a month or 6 weeks sometimes with families. And we found people who would sponsor them and give them a place for 2 weeks or whatever. And it was just a great experience. And these were young people who had never been to the United States. And it was a great experience for us and for them. And one young man, he was older when he came because he had already graduated college. He was from Austria, Walter Needleman, and he came to get his master's here. And so he was here for a couple of years, and he kept coming back to Athens and being with us on holidays and all. Then he went back to Vienna and got his PhD, and ended up working in New York. So we had kept up with him all these years. And Mildred and Gertie went to his wedding in Austria and had a great time. And the family was so glad to meet them. But it was just a great, for our children, for young, to have that experience of getting to know these young people. And I think we did that for, I guess, 10 or 12 years.
And Dr. Niederman came and attended the wedding of your grandson
yes.
This past year.
Yes.
Let's talk about the Living Heritage Museum. You were so fortunate, you and your friend Muriel Mayfield, among other people, helped start this great institution which is thriving today. Talk about that, please.
Muriel had the idea, and she asked quite a few people. I guess there were 10 or 12 people, maybe a few more, at her house. And we sat around her dining room table, and she talked about her idea of starting a museum. And we got, everybody was interested, and we mostly women at that meeting, but a few men. I know Bill Selden was there, but it was mostly women, and we started looking for a place to start the museum, and we looked at several places, and then we found out that the old college at Tennessee Wesleyan was vacant, and they graciously let us use that building. It was empty, and so we did some painting and work and moved in there in 52, I think, 52, and it was great for us. It was a good location, and it was great, but it was a 3-story building. We didn't have an elevator, and it caused a few, problems with, it wasn't handicapped accessible in any way, and but it worked fine. We were thrilled to have it, and it was a great start to the museum. So then the Mayfield family had bought the old high school building that was downtown Athens, and they offered this building, which was part of the high school. It was part of the cafeteria and the library and all. So they gave us the building we're in now, and so we started fundraising. Well, we've been fundraising from the time we started, but we started to raise money because it was going to cost a good bit to remodel this building, and but we started fundraising, and Muriel and I went and talked to the governor, and which we're fortunate that he was receptive, and they gave us a good sum of money, and then it was the local people who that stepped up and contributed. Many of them were with us who were here in town, and we raised enough money to remodel the building and to open. And at first we thought, well, we'd never fill it up because it was so much bigger than the old college, but it didn't take us long, and it's been very satisfying to have been a part of it, and we've never stopped working. We have a guild that's very active, and they're raising money, and we have so many volunteers that help us that we couldn't have done it otherwise. And we have tried to be frugal with our money and to use it to the best advantage, and we have been. I think sometimes it's easier to start something than it is to keep it going, and I'm proud that we have kept it going, and financially we've done well. So it's been, I think, I've enjoyed this more than anything that I've ever done.
Well, thank you for doing it, and I'm reminded, I believe it's 1982 that you went to the old college and did that, which was a wonderful start, and it's a great model for success, at least from my perspective, having been many places. And so thanks for doing it. And another model is very interesting. You were on the board of Woods Memorial Hospital for many years. Of course, the hospital was in your hometown of Etowah, and chairman for 3 years.
I was the first woman that was on that board.
Yes.
And I enjoyed it very much because I felt like the hospital was so needed and a great asset to the county. And then the Arts Center was organized pretty much along in the same time frame, and again with mostly women doing it, and with Sue Trotter's leadership, and I think the museum and the Arts Center have been great assets for the city and the county, and have done a lot for the people who live here.
And as has Tennessee Wesleyan University now, which you've been on the board for many years and received your honorary doctorate from that. You want to talk about your interest and involvement in Tennessee Wesleyan, please?
I have loved that, and it's been a good experience. And my mother went to, they had a high school at Wesleyan way back when she was a young person, and she went 1 year and lived in a dorm over there, and I've had heard her talk so much. She had enjoyed that. That was a great experience for her, but we've always been interested in Wesleyan, and again, it's such an asset to our county and this area, and it has a beautiful campus. The campus is lovely, and it's been great to get to know the students, and I'm so impressed with the quality of the students and their love for the school.
Well, they appreciate your involvement, and I was thinking, your mother went there, your husband went there before he went to the war, the Navy. I went there briefly because he thought it was a good idea before I went on the University of Tennessee. your grandson graduated from there, and he and his wife are in graduate school there. So it is, it's a tremendous situation. And you came from Etowah, but you dove into NODA and being involved in everything like that. Do you want to talk about some of the things you've done in NODA?
I love living in NODA. It's a great community. Joined the First Baptist Church, and where Hugh had grown up, and have had great friends there, and been very happy, and done a little bit of everything. And then I've been on the NODA Planning Commission for 30 plus years, and then about 15 years ago, the city organized a committee for the preservation of the depot, and I was appointed, and several people were on that committee, and we were supposed. The depot was in very poor condition. There have been some people that wanted to tear it down. It's the oldest standing depot in the state of Tennessee, and the majority of people now wanted it preserved and used. So we've worked for this 15 years, raising money, mostly women, and we got some grants and raised money, and we have completely restored that depot. And it's a beautiful old building and being used. The city has their offices there, and the big room that we remodeled, it's rented out for people for weddings or showers or just anything, and it's being used and taken care of. We had the Fried Green Tomato Festival. We've had it for about 8 years, and that started as a way of raising money, and everything we made goes toward the support of the depot. And in August, we are going to have an unveiling of a stamp on August 29th at the depot for the new stamp for women's suffrage. And that's a big event. And because of the virus, we can't have a big celebration, but we're going to have a small thing when they unveil the stamp. And then we hope next year we'll have something bigger. But it's been very rewarding that we see the depot in such good condition.
Well, and you served on the YMCA board, as did your husband, your son and daughter were both chairman of the YMCA, and we appreciate that. And that kind of brings to mind, we mentioned the Mayfield family has done so much for this community and so many others, but couldn't you say that that's been one of the positive things about McMinn County and Athens in particular, is the great connectivity between the families and being willing to work together, even though sometimes they were at odds on business aspects or things like that, but they always tried to do the best thing
for the community.
Overall.
Yeah.
And you're not one-sided. You like to have fun. You're an avid bridge player, and I know this has been hard, and I think that's good for everything. And you get a lot of community connection there. And then, of course, you were involved with the Garden Club, which has been a big part of the community for years, and a great place for new people to come in and be accepted into that. And then, of course, you were a member of the Athens Browning Circle, which we tend to forget about. But talk about that, please.
Well, I joined the Athens Browning Circle very soon after we came back to NODA, and it was a wonderful group of women. And they met once a week and had programs. And once a month they had a luncheon, which was a fundraiser, and then different members were chairman for the luncheon, and I was chairman for many years for luncheon, and enjoyed that, and I got to know so many of the women, the more older women that were all active in the Browning Circle, and they were great. They were very welcoming to younger women and very supportive. And they provided the only public library in the city. And they were helped to build the new library. They gave the money that they had left when they closed the Browning Circle. They gave all the money to the library, and so we have our new library. But I think it's good to remember how it started and where it came from.
I do too, and so many people have a tendency to forget what all had to be done to get us where we are
Yeah.
today. I told you I wanted